Hello, my name's Dan Davidson and I'm the CEO of Build Team. Welcome to today's house tour, which is in Telegraph Hill. Build Team were founded in 2007 and we're now in our 13th year. And before we start the virtual house tour, I just want to say three things about what makes us different. Firstly, we have a two-stage process, so you're able to come to us for the design phase, the build, or indeed the design and build of your kitchen extension. Secondly, we have our own in-house design team based here in Clapham, and you'll have your own dedicated design team member throughout the period of your engagement. And thirdly, we offer a full project management service, meaning that we'll make sure that your extension runs smoothly from start to finish, that it is on time and on budget, and that we will also assist with any snagging. So we'll cover three things today in the virtual house tour. Firstly, we'll hear from Stephen, who will provide us with a narrated tour of the finished project. We'll then go to David, who will ask the homeowners some questions in terms of how they found the process and what they would do differently next time. And finally, we'll hear from Mark about the build process, how it works, and the steps that are taken to ensure the project is managed effectively. We'll also have frequently answered questions, and we'll hear from Tess with some typical questions and answers from our team. If you have further questions beyond that, please do drop us a line. We'll be very happy to answer them. The next step in the process would be to book a design consultation. They're free of charge. They can either happen on the telephone, or you're very welcome to come to our office here in Clapham. They typically take around 30 minutes, and following the consultation, we'll issue a quote which will have our fixed fees for design and also our build cost.
Hello, and my name is Stephen Davison, and I'm one of the architectural designers with Build Team. I'll be taking you through the virtual house tour in regarding Gallatley Road. So what we'll be looking at is the existing floor plans, the proposed floor plan, as well as the tour itself. So in the ground floor plan, the existing, it's a typical Victorian terraced house with an outrigger to the rear. There's also a canopy out to the rear as well, which we'll look into in a bit more detail. And then when we go into the proposed itself, you can see what the client has done with us is to extend onto the side and as well as extend out to the rear, drastically transforming the space and making it a much more bigger and appealing space for the family to use. So going into the actual tour itself, starting off at the front door, of course, we walk through the long narrow hallway, which is typical of these Victorian terrace houses. But in this case, as we go deeper into the hall, it does start to get darker, but one of the good things about this project is that they've opened it up on one side you've got the storeroom, which is great for the clothes, closets, like a cloakroom basically. And on the other side we have a wet room, which is quite a nice, useful space where you've got the kind of shower downstairs with a toilet and the sink and everything. And to access this space, again, we have a pocket door, which is good for a space saver for these type of properties, and because of the narrow nature of the proposal. And as we move to the rear in a bit more detail, we also see on the other side, again, a utility space, which is quite useful to kind of pack away all that kind of noisy washer and dryer into one little cupboard. And then before we get into the kitchen itself, we have a pocket door. Now this door will need to be fire rated, of course, to comply with regulation with building control. And then when we lead into the actual extension itself, you can see we have a large dining table and island and kitchen layout, which is typical of these type of properties. But as we lean round into the side return and we travel into that area in the tour, you can see that there's a small office space with a little small desk, which is quite useful in this day and age with the Corvid and everything like that. So you've got the nice study space here, which is very useful for the kind of space for an office. And also behind we've got a small little cupboard, again, good for a pantry cupboard, which is good for more storage space for the property. And as you can see, we've got the inflected roof light that gets light into this middle room, which is often quite dark and kind of enclosed space, but it's quite useful for the kind of media room for the homeowners at the moment. And then as we travel around to the rear of the extension, we have the skylights, the Velux skylights, which are the standard size on the side return, as well as to the rear. And then on the rear itself, we have the doors that allow us to open up into the gardening space. Now the canopy on the rear has been moved back, so it's almost like an inside-outside space, giving you more space for the family to enjoy. And as we're in the garden and we pan round towards the extension itself, you can see the proposal is a pitched roof on the side. It's actually a pitched roof to the rear, but because of the parapet wall, we're able to hide and obscure that pitched roof, making it a much cleaner finish with a coping stone. And then as we lead back into the extension, I'll hand you over now to David, who will take you on to the next part of the tour.
My name is David. I'm one of the architectural designers here at Build Team, and I'll be asking the homeowners of this beautiful extension a few questions. How has the extension and internal reconfigurations changed how you and your family use the space?
The extension has really changed how we use the space, because we've gone from having a very sort of closed setup, little rooms that were dark and a bit cold, to suddenly it's now all open plan and we can run around continuously without interruption. If I'm being shouted at, I can escape through one side or I can go through the other side. It's really opened up the downstairs of the house. We've gone from having 3 or 4 different rooms to just one big open space that seems to be all connected.
It was actually designed to change how we use the space. The house was a Victorian house, small boxed rooms. And basically by doing the extension, we have opened up the space. We circulate much more freely between the areas. It also increases the interaction we are having in the family because we are more seeing each other, and also I cook quite a lot, and it allows me to know what my daughter is doing while I'm cooking.
We've gained a family home, simple as that.
The extension has created a lot of interesting spaces like your study and the separate living space and also the kitchen. What made you decide to divide the space up like that?
So we decided to divide the space to meet our needs. So we didn't have a downstairs bathroom, and that was high on our list. We really needed, coming back to the earlier points, to have open plan living, because we had a house with rooms, but they were kind of small and decompressed and it was difficult to be together sometimes. Also very pokey when you've got guests and family around to visit. There's just no space. So we needed to really open up the space, make maximum use of it. We didn't have a dedicated office space as well, so we made use of the difficult corridor between the back living room and the kitchen to put an office in there, which has been fantastic during lockdown. And also to bring in light, which we've been able to do on the side and at the back. It opens up nicely into the garden. So those really were our objectives.
One of the other reasons why we wanted this extension is that the area that is the nicest in the surroundings is actually the garden. The garden is quite long, and the neighbors have also quite nice gardens, and it allows to have this view over the green space, which we didn't have at all, because the living room was towards the street where there are cars, where there's noise, whereas this very peaceful and nice green area was basically not used. And now we have, from the morning when you arrive to have your coffee, first you have all this light which comes through, and then you see this nice garden.
I'm sure a lot has been learnt by you in regards to the process, the design process, and also the build process. What advice would you give clients looking to go through the whole process?
We really took our time before committing to do the project. I think we built up a relationship with Build Team over 3 or 4 years before we actually committed to doing the work. That was partially driven by circumstances at the time, but I think also it was a good idea looking back that we built up our trust before doing this, because it's a big commitment and it's expensive and you want to get it right. So that would definitely be my advice, is take your time, be comfortable with the decisions you're making. Once we got into the build work, we also decided to stay in. We lived in, because we have the whole house, so we could live upstairs. But again, I'm not sure we would have changed that, because it's an expensive thing. You've got to rent somewhere else. It just adds to the cost, but we decided to stay in. That does become quite unpleasant because you're living in a building site. It's dusty, it's dirty every day, it just gets your spirits down. So again, think that through if you're prepared to put up with that. If you've got the space, perhaps do it, save yourself some money, because you might need that in your contingency budget down the road.
I would actually add something on that, is so thinking about it again and living in the build side, I think I would do it again, because you see every day what's happening, you have the interaction with the team, which is very important, and you also build some form of trust on the team, so they are you know exactly what's happening, you have decisions to take, and you can just follow up on them daily. So living through it again, I think I would choose for those reasons to still live in.
Depends on how you want to experience the build project. If you want to do it through a lens of what a mess I'm living in, then it's going to be negative. If you decide to go down that path, recognise you've made that decision, embrace it. It's not going to be the most pleasant experience in your life for a few months, but it's worth it in the end, so just have the right mindset going into it. But you're right, building up a relationship with the builder during the build phase was invaluable, because it gave us the belief in what they were doing, and we could see the quality and the commitment they were putting in, and I think that has helped us appreciate the end result more, rather than moving back into a finished product. We've actually seen the difficulties they've had to deal with during the way and the effort they put in. So I think we appreciate the end result more that way.
And final question, if you were to give advice to your younger self, what would it be in regards to designing this extension?
If I could go back to the beginning and tell myself what to be aware of, it's more on the finishing touches. So for example, we've talked about our external patio space. Didn't think through that whilst we were going to put the veranda sort of sloping glass roof on, the floor level would just be a muddy, churned up mess, because that was the building site. We didn't think through that we would need to level that, concrete it, have a finished floor on it. So little things like that escaped our attention initially. There's only as we got towards the end that it dawned on us, oh hang on, we hadn't thought that part through. And obviously, because we hadn't thought it through, it wasn't in the budget, so eating into the contingency again, going beyond the contingency. So really think through every part of how you're going to use your extension. Not just the inside space, but perhaps the outside space too. Going
back to day one, the thing which would help me think through it is you need to have patience. It's quite a few weeks of build. It's around 4 months to have it all final, and it's not a great time, because at the beginning, so for the first 6 weeks it was fantastic. And then I think the weather, autumn became stronger, it became colder in the house and dustier, and there were lots of decisions to make. So it just be patient. It's tough, but then it will be all worth it at the end. It just becomes it's really at the end it's really worth it. But it's just a tough period, and you have to be aware of it and build your resilience to it. And then once it's finished, it's absolutely fantastic.
So yeah, I think just looking back in retrospect, one of the things that drew us to Build Team, that set them apart from other building firms we were considering, was the provision of a dedicated project manager. And it really did make a difference, actually, because it's not just you and the builder. The project manager is almost like a referee in some cases. They're on your side, they're checking the quality, and they're there to arbitrate if things perhaps go not according to plan, because there's always going to be surprises along the way, but they're also there checking the quality is fit for purpose, every milestone is achieved, and it was very reassuring to have that as part of the team.
Hello everybody, my name is Mark Eden and I run the construction arm of Build Team. Once we have your technical drawings sent down from design, then we work on a build proposal. And once your build proposal is accepted, We will then start to book in a meeting where you can meet your team, your foreman, and we can work on the build formalities. Throughout the build phase, we will be on hand to walk you through the build process. It's a 10-phase build process. We have the 10 phases start with strip out and site setup and complete with close down and snagging. And the project manager will guide you through all of those stages. Our hand-in-glove relationship with design means that any changes to your designs through the build process is handled seamlessly and is done free of charge. We have a 10-stage payment plan aligned with the 10 build stages, and it's not until the stage is complete and the project manager has signed off and certificated that any payment is due to the contractor. At the end of the project, we will collect all the necessary certification, put it in the completion pack and issue you along with the 10-year structural guarantee, and that will complete the process. Over to you, Tess.
Hi, I'm Tess. I work in design team in the interior and landscape team. I'm just going to read out some questions that we had emailed in. So we've had a question come in from John, and he'd like to know how long does a typical ground floor extension project take in the design process? David, maybe you would like to answer this question.
Thank you, Tess. The design phase takes roughly about 3 to 4 months, and that involves us doing the measured survey, unlimited amendments to your drawings, us then giving you advice on which planning application you should submit. We then submit it on your behalf to the council, and that takes usually about 8 weeks to go through the whole planning process. And we'll act as your agent through that process. And then at the end of that process, we then spend about 2 to 3 weeks putting together all your structural calculations, all your building control drawings. So that's everything a competent builder needs to build your project, and everything building control needs to also sign off your projects too.
We've had a question come in from Sarah, and she would like to know, can you help with the party wall award process? Stephen, maybe you could answer this question.
Thanks, Tess. Party wall is something we can definitely help with. To start off with party wall, we do as a separate service. It's an individual service that it's separated from our main design package. And what we can do there is to help out to facilitate the introduction of party wall. And we can do this by gathering some information in regards to what type of notice, who to serve to, just in case it's a correspondence address, of course. And then what we do then is basically determine the description of the notice as well. And amongst all that, we produce what we call an introductory pack, which outlines all these details, and then that'll be sent on to yourself. It also includes within our service of party wall the serving of notice to 2 adjoining owners. So that's where we would appoint our approved surveyor, who will then issue the notices on our behalf. It doesn't include if in the event of a dissent, but that's something that can potentially happen depending on the outcome of the initial serving notice. Amongst all the party wall service as well, we also accommodate the facilitation of any additional drawings or amendments that will be requested in line with the requirements for the Party Wall Act.
We've had a question come in from Mike, and he would like to know, can I tender out to other contractors at the end of the design process to get a price comparison to build team? Mark, could you answer this question, please?
Thank you, Tess. Yes, once you have your proposal from design, you can tender that out to other building contractors to get their proposals to compare alongside ours.
So that concludes our tour, and I hope you found it useful. If you do have any further questions, please do drop us a line, and we'd be very happy to help.